The principle of anticipation is going to strengthen our movements by providing our audience with a series of contrasting or opposite poses that invites them to explore the conclusion of our movement. Let's take a look at some examples of anticipation to really understand its moving parts and pieces, quite literally. So here I have just a fun little animation of a slingshot. And if you notice carefully, as the slingshot goes through its movement, the ball is the primary driver of this entire animation. This is about the ball. And we're going to show our audience in the direction the ball is going, but we're going to anticipate it first. We're going to show them the ball going in the opposite direction, and then it's going to be fired off over there on screen right. By providing this opposite direction inside of our animation, it gives excitement. And it also inspires the audience to ask a very simple question as to which direction this ball is going. And now they're part of this movement. They're an active member in this entire dialogue, if you will, between the artist and the audience. Another thing that this does, and it gives them a whole series of really extreme, exaggerated poses that again makes this animation a little bit more engaging and a little bit more interactive. The animation of our baseball player here is such a great example. We show them the opposite movement first, we show them the wind-up for the pitch, and we exaggerate it. We make it super large and bigger than it should be, and then we conclude the animation with the ball going in the direction that we, as the animator, want it to go. By having this extreme opposite, it makes it interactive. Our audience is then going to look at this and go, whoa, that's not what I was expecting at all. And in that moment, they are now looking at every single frame because they're engaged in the conclusion of our animation. This all comes from anticipation. It also allows us to communicate quite wonderfully to where the natural conclusion of this movement's going to be. Often in the art of animation, we're bombarding our audience with these really weird and wacky drawings, like a cartoon duck or dogs jumping off diving boards. It can be pretty strange, and in this strangeness, if you will, we need to ensure that we have protected our audience and we're taking them through this abstract exploration of our imagination. Anticipation is going to do that. It directs our audience from one weird thing, if you will, into another weird thing. It takes us from point A to point B, and it brings our audience along for the ride, which is pretty cool. A great example is this wonderful slingshot. Again, pretty big. We anticipate the entire movement by stretching out that string much bigger than it needs to be, which takes our audience from the opposite to the conclusion. That contrasting movement is anticipation, and it makes our entire movement engaging, communicative, and interactive. Like I had mentioned before, the anticipation frames and movements that we create helps communicate some really interesting objects and some really interesting movements to our audience themselves. It provides them with just a little bit of a foundation of realism to make this movement feel believable. I've never seen a cartoon duck out here in the real world, but in my animations and in the art of animations, we can have a cartoon duck running really quickly from the left side to the right side. Our audience is going to buy in and believe that this is real through these anticipatory moments. It's pretty cool when you start to design it. As human beings, we're bombarded with subliminal suggestions of our movements around our environment itself. We actually do this without being really aware that we do it. Our movement itself requires us to subliminally communicate to our surroundings what it is that we're about to do. We're accustomed to communicating to the people and our surroundings what we are about to do before we do it. This simple example of a character standing up from a chair is such a great illustration of this idea. We're seated, but then we lean forward, and that small little lean forward is the anticipatory movement. If you think about it, in every sense, that's the opposite pose before the character takes off. We squish down, and then we go up. We compress the spring, and then we expand the spring. These anticipatory movements communicate quite instantaneously what our character is about to do without physically telling our audience what we're going to do. Here's a great example of a character on a diving board. And this diving board animation just wonderfully illustrates the power of anticipation. Without any sort of anticipatory moment, our audience is going to be left lost and confused as to what in the world's going on. Is this a sidewalk? Is this the edge of a building? Oh wait, it's a diving board. The compression of the spring, the small little illustration that the board is vibrating up and down is enough information to tell our audience what they should expect the conclusion is going to be. Now what's cool about anticipation is that we can give them a little bit and our audience is going to start to fill in the blanks for their, by themselves, which is incredibly exciting. Without this anticipatory movement, they're not going to understand the conclusion. We show them the opposite, and then they're going to go, oh, okay, I understand. I have an idea in my imagination what the conclusion of this movement's going to be. Without that opposite extreme pose, they're going to be lost. They're going to be confused, and that's not a place where we want our audience to end up. And then lastly, here's another simple little example of anticipation. Magicians are just wonderful at anticipating their movements. They show them an exciting series of anticipatory poses that serves as a contrasting moment to the actual animation itself. Without these anticipatory movements, these really extreme abstract motions would be lost and confusing. But once we add them in, they now start to make sense. We now are grounded with a little bit of information that our audience can feel comfortable with the natural conclusion of these movements. The principle of anticipation is a critical part of all that we do in the craft of animation. As drawing actors, and that's how I like to think of it, as animators, we're almost like actors, right? We just act with our drawings versus acting on a stage. We invite our audience into these movements and start to communicate directly to them what the conclusion of these movements truly are. So please start to include some anticipatory poses inside of all your animations. This is one of those principles that starts to really push the craft forward and allows you to create some compelling movements that directly impacts your audience's understanding, comprehension to the dramatic narrative of the shot or the movement that you're crafting.